Welcome to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today I'm talking about something we've all experienced and found incredibly frustrating, the non-apology. You know the moment when it feels like someone has apologised, but you're left feeling worse and confused, as if you're the one who's done something wrong or transgressed. And then you start doubting yourself and your responses in the moment. Sometimes you can be left thinking, hang on, what actually happened there? We've got an excellent example of this in recent years, Boris Johnson and Partygate. I like to find relatable references for the show, and I'm fairly hopeful that this is one that we can all relate to. So we're going to have a look at why people do this, why it infuriates us, and what it says about our relationships. Let's start off by having a look at some classic non-apologies. I'm sorry you feel that way. Really? Are you? All it seems to me is you're putting the issue onto me, as if I'm somehow to blame. I'm sorry if anyone was offended. Again, the blame is on the other person for having a response to poor behaviour. Don't you think I'm sorry? No, because you haven't actually said it, and now you're sounding a teensy bit martyrish. Or, mistakes were made. Well, clearly, but there's not any taking up of responsibility here. Why do these feel so hollow? One reason is because they aren't personal. There's a shifting onto the other person, and no one is owning the responsibility for the apology or the behaviour. Whilst the other person is looking like they're being the bigger person for doing the apologising, or in this case, pseudo-apologising. What have we got going on here psychodynamically? It won't surprise you to know that we've got some defence mechanisms at play. Remember, we don't want to feel anxiety at any cost, so we're going to do whatever we can to protect ourselves from it. By apologising, we are, in effect, saying that we've done something wrong, which can create all kinds of anxious feelings within us. But also, not apologising has its own challenges to our nervous system. So we come up with the best response possible, the non-apology. Rationalisation is a big player here. We can give incredibly good reasons for our behaviour, and if we've got incredibly good reasons, then really, why are we apologising? Surely the other person or people, they're being oversensitive. Can't they see our good reasons for our behaviour? And when you think about it, maybe they caused this poor behaviour in us, and they should be apologising to us. Now, we can be flippant about this one, but I'm sure that you can see that this can lead to some pretty awful and dangerous behaviour. It's one to watch out for because it can be a slippery slope into a very unpleasant dynamic. We've also got denial. I don't want to think about my poor behaviour, so I'm going to deny it ever happened. And if you ever point out to me that this did happen, then I'm going to fight you with everything that I have. In the end, I can have you questioning your own sanity. But the most important point for me here is that I'm avoiding anxiety. Now, with this example, you can start to see here how gaslighting happens. It's a brilliant example of splitting. I can't be a good person and someone who did something bad, so I'll bend the apology to keep myself good. Otherwise, my view of myself is going to be fractured, and I can't manage that. The shame that I'm carrying with this is too much of a threat to my self-image, so I need to push this outwards. And tying all this together is projection. In particular, projecting our blame onto other people. And this works particularly well if the other person is emotionally upset at this point, as they can't really see what's happening. Remember, projection is where we have parts of ourselves that we don't like very much, and we don't want them lurking around in either our conscious or unconscious minds, so we locate them in other people. The problem isn't with me, it's with you. You're the one with the problem because of your response. So let's look at this with a well-known example, Boris Johnson and Partygate. If we think back to the days of the pandemic, we were all living under some pretty strict rules. At one point he cancelled Christmas, or close enough. These rules stated that we couldn't gather with people who weren't in our pod, or whatever the term was, and there were good reasons for these rules. People were dying. We couldn't have any kind of social meet-up. Weddings were delayed, funerals took place online. Parties were definitely out. The most we saw people was either in the supermarkets. Do you remember the queuing to get into those? Although it did make for a more pleasant experience once you were inside. Or when we stood on our doorsteps at 8 p.m. on Thursday evenings and clapped for the NHS. And then it later transpired that Boris and his staff at number 10, and I think number 11 as well, were flouting these rules and enjoying social gatherings, which, to anyone looking in, they were pretty indistinguishable from a party. I say looked because there was photographic evidence of this. The people that were supposed to be leading the country by example had completely taken us all for fools. Now, once this was made public, how did Boris respond? I want to apologise for the way that this has been handled and for the upset it has caused. Okay. So not actually apologising for the event. He acknowledged the upset, but not that he'd done anything wrong. His PR team missed the point. People wanted accountability, but got deflection. And Boris, for all his bluster, is supposed to be an intelligent man. Yet he didn't see that how he responded to the anger of the public was miles off what was needed in that moment. Where his mind was focused was trying to avoid any shame associated with this event and his political need to maintain authority. In his mind, if he admitted any wrongdoing, then he would have lost his leadership position in people's minds. And yet, the strongest thing that people can do is admit when they're wrong. Do you remember how you felt when you heard about it? Rage? Cynicism? Or did you think that he was doing a difficult job and so was entitled to a break? Consider your reaction, because our reaction says something about how we need, or maybe don't need, accountability from authority figures. It's not just on the political or celebrity stage that these non-apologies show up. They can be part of our family and friend dynamics. Sorry, but you know how I get when I'm tired. And also in workplaces. I'm sorry if you misunderstood. It feels like a dance that we're being invited to. But what if we don't want to take up the invitation? Do we risk being cast out into the abyss? Because it can feel like our relationship with that person is under threat if we don't take up that invitation. In coaching, when our clients apologise in this way, it can maybe flag shame, fear of rejection, or power struggles. Now, it's not our job as coaches to apportion blame or to tell clients that they're wrong. It's for us to invite different perspectives to consider. What could true repair look like? And not just a surface keeping of the peace. Now, what a real apology sounds like is it's one with a clear structure, we acknowledge our behaviour, maybe we name the impact that it's had. The key thing here is we take responsibility and we state our intention to do things differently. And just I'd offer you, compare that side by side with Boris's, I'm sorry you were upset. At no point is the behaviour acknowledged. Certainly had no desire to name the impact that it had on people. And there was definitely no taking of responsibility. My invitation to you this week is for you to consider where in your life you've been on the receiving end of a non-apology. What did that stir up in you? How did you feel and respond in that moment? Now, on a more challenging note, where have you been the one giving non-apologies? And what might you have been trying to avoid in these situations? And, as always, give yourself some grace. It can be difficult to realise that we've been avoiding apologising to save ourselves from anxiety. If you can't wait for the next podcast, there's my weekly LinkedIn live sessions. I'm doing these on Monday afternoons at 2:30, so do come and join the fun in those. unless it's a bank holiday, and then I'll have my feet up and I'll be watching a James Bond film. And as we always close, looking at ourselves at this level can be challenging and unnerving as we develop our awareness, so I'd always encourage that you do this at your own speed. To have a chat about psychodynamics and find out more about the different ways that you can work with me, either as a trainer, a coach, a supervisor or a mentor, then click on the link that's in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Dynamics of Everyday Life. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. As well as producing this podcast, The Dynamics of Everyday Life has lots more psychodynamic fun going on, and you can find out more at dynamicsofeveryday.life.